Right, hello YouTube and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program. Now, at the end of the last one, we had what management would later find out to be a bit of an incident in which Jeb had not apparently been trained on how to open the inside of the capsule door, and despite being equipped with a parachute, was unable to actually bail out, and slightly died when the whole thing went wrong and he exploded. However, we did make it to orbit, so we got a bit of progress. So what we're going to do, first of all, we are performing what we're calling mandatory training. We're going to upgrade the astronaut complex to allow them to perform EVAs, which will allow them to get out. So if we have another repeat of last time, we'll be able to escape. Next up, we're going to R&D, and we're going to research survivability, which will give us heat shields to solve the next part of our problem. These also are quite heavy components, which will make the capsule a lot heavier and make it much easier for it to re-enter without exploding, because it will help keep it going the right way, and we can detach the engine section. We also gain access to the barometer, so more science options. Gives us more access to further research. I think we will take the middle one, because it's the only one we can afford, and because it's useful. We'll take stability, which gives access to some bigger fins as well, and some more options. And we're also going to do some more stuff. We're going to upgrade the mission control, which will give us access to more contracts that allow us to do more flight planning. And we're going to upgrade the tracking station. This is quite an expensive one, but with these two upgraded, we will now... Well, I'll show you the next mission where we actually launch. But we'll be able to do something quite important. Let's also take a quick look at contracts. We've got one to take a spacewalk around Kerbin, so we're going to take that. Just that one for now, because again, I tend to ignore a lot of the base game contracts. Most of the stuff that I just don't find fun is difficult and doesn't pay tremendously well a lot of the time. It gets better later on, but the early game stuff is not great. Go to upgrade the Onion 4 to the Onion 5 as well, which is not a significant difference, but going to fit larger fins at the bottom. And more importantly, which I nearly forgot about, we're also going to upgrade to add a heat shield. This will affect our thrust to weight ratio a bit, because if you think about it, anything you add on the top stage is going to be something that every other stage carrying it is going to feel the weight of. So the very last stage on your rocket is usually one of the most important, because it will affect everything beneath it. The Onion 5. We're also going to take off one of the thermometers, because we don't really need to. And to balance things out, because it's usually best to keep your rocket balanced on both sides, at least roughly. The barometer on the other side. I believe that's everything we need to improve. The parachute was okay until it fell off. Yes, I believe we are good to go. We don't have any new engines, so let us launch the Onion 5. Oh, we do need to set its crew, however. That's already done it. Valentina Kerman, who is the first female Kerbal added to the game in a update from a while back. Jeb, Bill, and Bob were the original three, and Valentina kind of joined them. The other Kerbals you can hire are effectively somewhat randomized. They have two traits, which is bravery and stupidity, and I'm not actually sure I hate them. I think it's courage and stupidity, I can't remember, but anyway. I'm not sure either of these actually affect anything in flight apart from how they react, but the random Kerbals you can recruit are, what do you call it? You have to pay a fair bit of money for them. You can reuse them after each mission as long as you bring them back, okay, and you have a limit to how many you can have at once. Turn the light on so Valentina can see. Right, and 3, 2, 1, liftoff. Other than the heat shield, the mission plan is going to be mostly similar, but we're also going to add in that spacewalk, and we're going to aim for a more specific orbit, because we should be able to do that now, and you'll see why in a minute. I'm going to tilt to 45 degrees. What is called a gravity turn. It's basically a fairly efficient way of going into space. 45 is about here on the it's this sort of inner ring on the nav ball. I'm probably turning a bit early on this gravity turn. I actually don't know when you're supposed to do it, and technically later on we'll be able to do a sort of smoother way of doing it, but this works well enough for me. Well, MechJeb will do them automatically. So we're about to burn out, so we're going to stop turning for a moment. Next engine. Sort of balances your thrust thrust well between accelerating you, which you need to do to get into orbit, because you need to be going at a certain speed, and also gaining your altitude and getting you out of the thicker part of the atmosphere where your rockets can't work as efficiently. And we're above 100. There you go. We're a little above 100. We'll keep the extra weight for the moment. I've heard apparently a bit of a trick you can use is to wait to detach your lower stage until you're out of most of the orbit, because it gives you a bit more weight to help you go through it. It gives you a bit more momentum. Momentum even. So notice we've got an apparatus marker now. We can see what the highest part is, and we can add maneuvers. If we go drag the green one out and then center it with that. I don't know exactly what all these tools are called, so I'm not going to worry about explaining them too much. You'll notice we have a new maneuver marker, which is this blue one. That is face this way, basically, when you want to maneuver. That's the way you want to be pointed. Now, the burn time we'll have to have the engine running for is 2 minutes 30 seconds. So half, roughly, that is 1 minute 15 and a bit. Oh, no, it's adjusted. Okay. 1 minute and 2 seconds. So 1 minute and 2 seconds we want to start our burn. You want half of it before the burn time and half after. It's a little strange, but we'll time warp a little bit until it's 102. And then we'll max it out. Max out the throttle. Yeah, we don't have any additional tools, so we're going to have to steer this manually. You steer with the WS and D keys, and you can use Q and E to rotate. Again, we've got a bit of torque, and we've got reaction wheels in the pod, so we can turn in space. You might be thinking, oh, what about those jets that they normally use to like maneuver? You always see like little white jets on a craft in space. They are an option. They just aren't something we have yet. Reaction thrusters, as they're called, reaction control systems, are a lot more powerful than reaction wheels normally. In real life, definitely so, enormously more. But they require fuel on board. Now, we actually have a little bit, because you get a little bit free in the pod. But we can't use it yet. In fact, we could even on future missions until we get them. We could actually remove it from the pod to save a tiny bit of weight. But yes, so we're staying on the point. If you notice, our orbit is expanding. If we get it right, if we get it perfect, our orbit will exactly match what we can see here. Now, you're almost never actually going to get it perfect, even with the autopilot, but it's usually close enough that it doesn't matter. The main point is we get into orbit with this, and you notice we'll have a bit more fuel left over. Should have about 350 roughly. As opposed to 250, although we will be at a lower orbit. I think I vaguely touched on this last time, but if you want to slow down, it's a general tip for like rocketry. If you want to slow down, do it at your Apple apps, and it'll. I think it works a little better. I believe because you're already moving slowest, but again, don't quote me on that. I don't think that's quite the reasoning, but it's true anyway that if you slow down there, it'll have a larger effect on your lower orbit. If you want to speed up, do it at your lower orbit, because I think you've already accelerated a bit coming around. You'll lose that speed as you get higher up, but again, I think I'm wording things slightly wrong, but it's the do what I do, not what I mean. Or do what I mean, rather, not what I do, I'll say. Yes, Confucius says, what is this man talking about? Either way, you'll notice. Just slightly keep us on track. There we go. Slightly overshot, I think, but get rid of the maneuver, and you notice we're above 100 on both sides. We are in orbit again. Now, we're going to do that spacewalk, but you notice it's very dark around here. If I get out now, especially given the sun's about to go behind us, we're not really going to be able to see, so we're going to time warp until we're on the other side of the planet. Now, speaking of that, we have to be a little bit careful, because our rocket has batteries on board. It does have electricity, and it will drain over time. So we're going to load this display up so we can definitely keep an eye on it. It's still not draining. In fact, I think we're okay, actually, because we're not a probe core. I think because we're a crewed pod and we're not doing anything, we're okay. You don't have to worry about life support. Just don't open your helmet in space. So don't lose power to that. Let's point us towards the sun so we can see it. And also use our science experiments. Temperature scan. Yep. Crew report. Seems we are very much in space right now. The sky seems to be mostly below us. Good sign. Atmosphere scan for the barometer. The instrument reads 0. It's almost as if we're in a vacuum. And Strigu, I believe it's orange because it's warning you again that you can't reuse it without doing some work. EVA, extravehicular activity, or in other words, get out of the rocket. There you go. Valentino is on a ladder. We press space. Whee! We let go. Now if we press R, which would normally turn on your reaction thrusters in your craft, you turn on their little jetpack. Use WASD to move it, and Shift and Control to go up and down. Remember, you are in space. Once you do something, unless you do something else, nothing's going to stop you. So usually little bursts, or short bursts to get you accelerated forwards and then to stop you again later. But the way to go. We have EVA propellant, which we have a reasonable amount of, but we will run out eventually. Do an EVA report. Fortunately, you don't get any dialogue for that particular one, but it's like, what's going on here? Reasonably happy about this. Also, a little tip, if you press the lights button, even though pressing L to turn on the lights doesn't work, if you click the lights icon up there, it makes you turn on the headlights. But yes. The contract was to do a spacewalk, which we've done. So now let's get in the craft. Press F to grab it, and then B to get back on board when you're next to a capsule. Or an airlock, I should say. But there is one on your capsule. We probably should have left the stability assist on, but I think it actually maybe can't run while we don't have a pilot on board. Which is why it was spinning very slightly. Let us leave orbit. Once again, we point backwards, or retrograde as it's called. Prograde is forwards in space, retrograde is back. Effectively. Again, a lot of this I am drastically simplifying, probably to a degree that would annoy the people who actually fully understand this stuff. I get a good deal of it, but not all of it by any means. That should be about right. And now let us re-enter. I don't want to try to take an EVA report there, mostly because we can only hold one of each type anyway, of our science data in the capsule. So it would overwrite the other one, and the other one's worth more. And partly because I don't want to get out when we're on a path that doesn't stay in orbit. Or that does re-enter, I guess you'd say. Right, we're going to quickly burn up the last of our fuel. Then this time, rather than using the engine to try and shield us and failing, which might have worked if we'd been at a lower altitude, I should add, because we would have been moving slower. Just going to ditch it. We are now in freefall. We have no way of resting our fall, aside from our parachute, basically, at this point. Time warp till we hit the atmosphere proper. It's apparently about now. Conditions outside the pod reading spicy. Since we balance quite nicely, I can actually turn stability assist off, and it will the friction on the heat shield will actually automatically stabilize us. Right click on the heat shield. You see how much ablator is on it now. Ablator is basically a material designed to burn off, and it takes the heat with it to keep the rest of the pod cool. If your ablator runs out, your heat shield could overheat and explode like any other part. You're unlikely to ever burn this up, as far as I can tell, unless you're coming in very fast, or you're using the same heat shield for multiple flights. So just keep that in mind, but you should be fine. You can also jettison the heat shield. If they are heavy, you can detach them if you need to, for the sake of your parachutes. The only slight thing we have here is it looks like we're coming into land in a mountain range. So hopefully we'll either land there and miss it, or we'll go over it, but no, we're going to land in it, I think. Not ideal. I was trying to avoid that, but it's a little hard to manually predict where you re-enter. What we could do, perhaps, once we're moving slow enough, is deploy the parachute really early, high up, where it will slow us down. But I think we'll... yeah, we'll do that. We'll deploy it quite early. It partially deploys early, high up, and will slow you down a little bit, but it'll slow you down a lot more once it's deployed fully. And we might actually manage to land about there and on the relative flat. If we land on the mountain, it's very steep. It's a bit iffy whether you can bring it down or not. If you're really quick, you can hit recover vessel just as it lands and it's stopped. Because as long as you're on the ground and you're not moving at the moment, you can recover a vessel, even if it was just about to then start to tumble down and explode. Well, slightly cheap trick perhaps, but it does work. But I think we're going to be okay. We've missed it. We've come just before it. This is why you might want this display, because we're 4,000 meters above sea level, but we're only 2,000 above the ground. And slowing down. Still going to be on a bit of a slope, but this is not steep enough that it should be fatal by any means. Turn the light off inside the capsule. As there is, you know, sunlight outside. And gradually drift down. A little bit of a heavy impact, but we made it. We're heavy enough on the bottom. We actually stuck to the surface. We can recover the vessel. The onion obviously would have started to roll there. Yet another reason I consider it to be not really as good. I thought I'd use it in the first episode because it's interesting, but in practice I find it generally harder to work with. I think you can get a 3-person version of it in a very small form factor, which is actually quite good. But yeah, the actual sort of, I guess, ergonomics of using it in general are not great, really. Okay, quite a lot of science there, 53. Got some funds. And Valentina has done some stuff to cause her to level up, which will give us some more options we can do with her stability assist. Our next quest is actually to travel to the moon. They actually want us to fly by is literally fly past it. So get into its sphere of influence, which is like sort of space around it, I guess you would say. And then leave, basically. Shouldn't be too difficult. I think we can do this with what we've got. So let's see what our options are. We're going to go to R&D first, because we're going to need some new parts for this, I think, or at least it will help. I believe some of these nodes won't have much in them just yet. But some of them are still prerequisites for later tech. I'm thinking we might want to do this with a drone. Or a probe, I should say. But I don't know. I'm trying to remember where we actually unlock those. Is it unmanned? Surely we get some before unmanned, right? Maybe we don't. I thought we did. No, maybe it is unmanned tech. Huh. That's further down than I thought. No, we do. We get one on this. Yes, we're going to take basic science, which gives us the Stay Putnik, some batteries, some antennas, capacitors, which are... They can basically store a very large amount of power and release them very quickly. The idea of these is more intended for some of the high-tech stuff later, but they can work on satellites. We've got the Science Junior radial version. We've got Experiment Return Capsule. This is useful. This can store, including copies of the same data, but it can also store individual data and then be sent back to recover more easily because it's well shaped for re-entry. Stay Putnik is a Sputnik copy. Batteries. Science Junior is a science module that's a bit larger. Experiment storage unit, same sort of idea as the return unit, but in a different shape. Radiator panel, more radiators, therefore dissipating heat, which is not really so much of an issue at the moment. A drone system for universal storage and a battery for it. We're going to take that. Think we can afford any of these? No, they're all going up in cost a bit now. So, lots of daytime as well. So our next mission isn't at night. Save. And let's get to building our next craft. This has to go to the moon and fly by it. We may even need to upgrade our launch pads for this, depending on what we can do with this. But we'll see what we can do. We're going to start a completely new craft for this because it's going to be totally different. BDR-003 Muna. Yes, it is spelt Moon, M-U-N in this, not M-O-O-N. So, what I'm thinking is we'd like to maybe try and recover this as well. So I'm going to put the Stay Putnik on top of a recovery unit. The heat shield below it. Although I had just realised we're going to need a parachute. I suppose we could put a parachute clipping into it a bit. That looks a bit awkward. Yeah, the thing with the Stay Putnik is it doesn't have a node on top of it, so we can't attach things to the top. And while we'll later get flatter probes, we don't have any yet. So what we might in fact do then is just assume this is not going to come back and build it to transmit data back instead. Now, as things stand, we don't have a great adapter, so actually might still be best having the return unit so we can neatly adapt to a fuel tank. Let's have a engine on the bottom of this. We're going to want to keep it light. If it's light, we'll get further on less. So at the moment, we used to get a pretty outstanding 4K Delta V with this tiny little thing. Yes, it'd have to get into orbit. In fact, this could go to orbit on its own, in theory. So we're going to start with this and work downwards. We're also going to want to give it improved batteries, though, because on the existing batteries, it's probably not going to make it to the moon. Maybe like that. Yeah, it looks alright. Let's shut this down a little bit. And we'll also want an antenna. As we're going off to the moon, it's a bit of a distance away. We shall fit 500 kilometers. We probably want one that's in the M. We want one that's in the millions of miles. You can see it's a bit hard to see behind the thing, but you see there's an antenna rating, MM. So the high gain antenna is our longest range antenna. Although we should probably check the battery drain on it. 0.55 a second. That should be okay. So that should be able to fly through space and send data back to Earth. Kerbal. We're also going to need some actual science modules. So to balance out the antenna, we'll put them on this side. Toggle the flag off because it's going to get a bit buried underneath everything else. Thermometer, we'll have a barometer, and we'll also I'll fit a mystery goo under there, and we'll fit a science junior on it as well. Now you probably, yep, you notice the fuel efficiency has gone down significantly. We've gone down to almost 3,000 delta V, which is not bad. That'll still get us a decent way. Still, as long as we can get this to orbit, it'll be more than enough to take it to the moon. Probably would be enough to recover it if we had a way to do that, but I don't rate our chances of re-entering this successfully, so... And again, at the moment, since we don't have a flat drone core, it's really awkward to actually mount a parachute for recovery on it. I'll then do a decoupler. The other thing you might be thinking is there's a lot of parts. We've only got a 30-part limit. Yes, this may be an issue on this one. It's also not hugely aerodynamic, but I don't believe... Whoops. That's a video of an entity in the background. Yes, we don't have any fairings yet, so at the moment we're just going to have to deal with that. Which is a mantra I could use for a lot of this game. We're going to have to make a fuel tank out of a few smaller ones. I'm going to fit an LTV-45. It is turnable, it is efficient. Even if it's not the most efficient. That should do good for our second stage, and then for our bottom stage, add the coupler. So again, we need about 4,000 to get it into space. Although we can use a bit of our upper stage. So we've actually got 5,600 in all. That will actually probably do it. So we shall use this. Now, this second stage shouldn't need as many fins because it's got a gimbaling engine. So an engine that can pivot and stabilise itself. But we'll give it some small ones just in case. Which should help it a little bit. And I believe that is good to launch. That should be our little lunar probe ready to go. But we need to check the staging quickly. Main engine, yep. The couples, yep. And, yep, that is correct. That's good. That's all running in the right order. What we don't have is any way of generating more power at the moment. So once this runs out of power, it will be useless. So whatever we do with it, we don't want to take too long, basically, once we're in orbit. We have improved its batteries, but they will only last so long. So again, our mission is to fly by the moon. So first of all, we're going to need to get it up there. So we need to put it in orbit. I have no control over this craft. Why do I not? Hello? No connection to send data on. I'm sorry. That's weird. We should do. Do you think we have no antenna? Is that because it's non-active right off the start? I suppose that one is folded. It's not active. Ah, that's still the thing I'm trying to edit. Clicking off screen is probably going to be a bit of a problem. Let's try fitting a antenna that should be active right from the start and see if that's what we're missing. But that is weird. I've not seen that issue for a while. We definitely have a probe core. It could be that the probe core's not the core part, but it seems to think we just have no connection to it at all, which is unusual. I guess maybe the stay pattern doesn't have a small antenna built in for that, like most of the other ones do. Yes, if you're doing an unmanned craft, you basically almost always need it actually connected to ground control. It is working now. Okay. Control from here if it isn't already. Yes, we also have no SAS. So this mission is going to be awkward. We might even have to reconsider and do it with crew again. But we'll give this a try as is. But yes, we're not going to be able to stabilise it properly. So again, interesting. But let's see. Let's see what we can do. So 3, 2, 1, liftoff. theory, gravity turn, which is something you can make under gravity, should happen nice and smoothly naturally. Without even having to touch the controls if you've built a reasonably good rocket. If it doesn't work, we'll tilt it a tiny bit manually like just then. Keep it on course. But yes, I had forgotten that the Stay Putnik is a very basic core and does not have any SAS at all. Whereas with the crew, SAS is limited to their experience. With probes, it is limited to how advanced is your probe. And I have realised that without the probe SAS, you apparently can't control this craft. Oh boy. This is going to be interesting. No. This rocket is fighting me. No, other way. You're trying to go that way. Oh my god. Really not make it easy for me. How high up did we get? 3,000. Okay. There's another trick we can try here. We're going to revert to launch. Just take us back to the launch pad. We're going to do what we were trying to do before, and then we're going to try something that should keep it a little bit more stable. This is a little trick I learned from actually real-life rocket science. It's something they sort of used to do on real ones. I'm doing it a little bit differently, but we're going to try spin stabilizing it. So, once we'll get it to our gravity turn, as before. Once we're nearly at the point of decoupling, we're going to make it start spinning. In fact, can we do that now? Obviously, we won't spin stabilize, and I'm not actually sure we have enough torque to do that. We may just have to consider this rocket a write-off and return to the launch things. Again, I had not quite realised how limited our capabilities were going to be with this particular thing. I'll just try really hard to keep it going straight. So I really want to torque left. The drag from the antenna? It can't be that high, can it? The mass should be balanced okay, shouldn't it? Got fins at the bottom. I'm not sure why this one is reacting so badly to just everything. Tell you what, we'll consider it a write-off, but we'll transmit some data back to Kerbin on the way down. You see, we get not as much for transmitting. We get some, but not as much. You might have to go out and actually recover it later. But we'll take some science as they're available. We can actually use the engine as a generator in it, so we can use that to recharge the battery on the way down. So we can transmit even more science. What we could even potentially do is try and soft land in the water and get some readings from there as well. Again, missions are sometimes semi-recoverable, even if perhaps not quite how you expect. I'm really surprised it didn't work, though. I get it, like I forgot about the lack of stability assist, but... Okay, good news is we are rear heavy, so that idea of slowing us down potentially before we hit the water might work. But we'll keep the science display available, because then, potentially, as we get close to the ground, we might have more science experiments available, perhaps. Yeah, the good news is this rocket wants the full engine down, so... Which makes me even more confused as to why it tumbled so badly, even without SAS active. This might work. I'm not entirely sure, but... still going much too fast at the moment, mind. We definitely need to shut off more speed than this. I think we're still going to splash, and we're going to break some stuff, I think, at any rate here. Does that give us a little bit more drag? Teeny tiny bit? No, we're not really slowing down now. See what happens, how much of it breaks, if not all of it. It's all of it. Well, I think as with the first episode, we shall end on an explosion. Hopefully you all enjoyed the series so far. As said, we're aiming to do a bit of a Deep Space Colony base by the end of this, but it seems we have a bit to go perhaps. So until next time, I'll see you all later. Goodbye.